I have a really big temptation in life at the moment, right now. You know how it is when you decide that you want to go down a certain route in life. You've made up your mind about what you want to do, and you just have to wait for it. But all the time, it's in the back of your mind. How can I do this sooner? So, we're talking about early retirement. I have a plan, as I said in my first ever video on this channel. I have a plan that I think can work, but maybe it could be done sooner. So here's a snapshot from my recent monthly update video. In it, I forecast that we could retire at 58. This is the calculations presuming we decide to take the tax-free cash out of the pension at the start. The original idea of this being that we would use the money to pay off the mortgage. Notice that the maximum house we can afford to retire right now is £61,400. What happens if we decide not to pay off the mortgage? Okay, stay with me here. If, in theory, we decided not to take the tax-free cash out, then look what happens to the maximum house price purchase we're able to afford right now. It jumps up to nearly £100,000. However, we would still have a mortgage to pay. We could retire sooner than 58 if we chose this route of not taking out the 25% tax-free cash. So we would have to downsize our current house, pay off the mortgage, and then we could retire at 56. So that's it then. We could do it in just 3 years' time. Well, maybe not. You see, sometimes I get this urge, this temptation to do it even sooner. So let's go back to the spreadsheet. What I sometimes think about is this housing figure. I don't look at it and think, £100,000 wouldn't get you much. Sure, we could use it to buy a house somewhere. There are houses in the UK for sale for this price. I was looking earlier today, and there are plenty. You could get a 3-bedroom, semi-detached house in the northeast of England for that kind of money. However, that's not the temptation that crops up in my mind. I've got nothing against the northeast. However, it's quite a bit away from family. No, I look at it and think, I've already got £100,000 above what I need to fund early retirement right now. My thoughts are, I could just get a camper van and travel around the UK, popping over into Europe for a few months at a time and touring all the coasts and visiting places with no rush at all. But then what happens at 67? I reach normal retirement age and I've blown our pensions, sold the house just for a few years of fun. Sure, it'd be great for those 14 years. I'd have an absolute hoot of a time and really enjoy ourselves. But then the reality would hit home. Later in life, when we try to survive on the state pension and have to pay rent as well, and the thought of, as a renter, the possibility of having to move to another rental property during, say, our 80s, that doesn't sound very appealing. But then there's another option. This is my preferred option. We could use the £100,000 and add it to a buy-to-let mortgage taken over, say, 15 years. The idea being we rent this out and we travel the world. I say the world, but I think mainly it would be Asia. There are some incredibly good value places to stay, and life as a frugal digital nomad would be fun, trying to stay within budget. We would probably have a budget of around £1,600 a month to cover everything, including travel insurance whilst there. Is this achievable? So we would obviously have to use the proceeds from the sale of our current house to fund the early part of retirement. Our calculations show that we would have about £115,000 spare of equity after purchasing the buy-to-let. So this would more than cover the 4 years until we can access our pensions. Once we reach 57, we could take out the tax-free cash and put it in an ISA. But this will have to be used to help fund our retirement along with our pensions until we're 67. Then, when we reach 67 or 68, we could return to the UK and we'd have a place ready to move back to. So, looking at what property price we could afford to get to rent out. Well, with £100,000, we would obviously have enough for a deposit for a buy-to-let mortgage. So, looking at rents in one of the areas we're thinking of moving to, a 3-bed house would command a rent of at least £1,200 a month. If I end up with, say, £800 to £900 a month net after expenses, how much mortgage could I get? So I checked a couple of sites, and with this sort of loan to value of around 55%, I think we could get a £110,000 mortgage. So £210,000 for a house. So whilst it's doable, it's a far higher risk strategy than our current plan, though would be very memorable, hopefully for the right reasons. The key part of this plan will be whether we could live on just £1,600 a month whilst abroad. We would also need extra lump sums to pay for flights. We would probably come back to the UK a couple of times a year. So I've raised lots of possibilities and permutations today, and just shows what is possible. It's certainly something to think about, but even with the current totals in our pensions, I don't think we're quite there yet. But that doesn't stop it churning away in the back of my mind. It's always saying, but what about this way? It's that combination of knowing something and thinking about it that makes it so powerful. Knowledge and thoughts help best achieve real retirement years. It's what I can't stop thinking about. I'd be really interested in people's thoughts on all that I've talked about, especially if you've gone down or plan to go down any of these routes, selling everything and traveling abroad, or renting your house out to travel. I'd love to hear from anyone that has done similar. Did it work out? What were the unexpected costs? So that's all my thoughts for now, and I'll see you in the next one.